Well, it is so nice to meet you. Hello to everyone joining. I see some familiar faces. Today we are with the wonderful Christelle Matou. Is that right?
Matou. Matou.
Mat- Okay, Christelle Matou. She is a production designer and a costume designer based in New York, and she's done film, television, theater, dance productions, concerts, a very impressive resume. But I want you to introduce yourself to everyone, if you don't mind.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm, as May said, a film designer. I don't have a preference. It's a project excites me. I work on production design, costume design, and I graduated from NYU School of Tisch School design for stage and film. And since I've been, as you explained, working in so many different media, and just as I say, I respond to what is exciting me, and I'm very passionate about what I do.
It's amazing, yeah, because especially, we talked about your shorts, like you've done work on The Mailbox, Confidence, The Island, but I also saw some of your music videos, like Black Girl Magic. That was so fun, and the colors are amazing. And so, like, my first question when I started becoming familiarized with your work is, what got you into production design? Like, why this, and costume design? Why this specifically?
Well, um, I'm someone who always enjoy storytelling, and um, but I also I found myself always drawn to the details beyond the dialogue that is happening in the story. And to me, they could say so much more than even the words. And from even if you see someone with a simple T-shirt, you know, walking with a jeans T-shirt, it says the choice that you make is the first introduction to the character. So to me, I was interested into clothes beyond fashion. I was interested in what the story they say, and that's why I pursued costume design. And I went to Tisch specifically for that. And so my training was focused mostly on how to costume design and how to tell a story um, through clothes. And from there, I was not thinking of production design until I started working on films, because it's so interconnected. And I found myself in a situation where, you made mistakes, and when you start, and you focus on in your own field, and then you realize that you need to communicate with the production designer and vice versa, because the environment and the clothes are interconnected, and what you're trying to say, and you could fail at saying the story properly if those are not in sync.
Absolutely. I mean, the production design and costume design, that's one of the biggest pillars of the mise en scène. And, that's something that, especially as professors, we try and drill into students, like, this tells you about the story. Especially because you've done some period pieces, like The Island was 80s, right?
Yes, it was in 1980s, and I started a conversation with the director, and who also wrote the script. And so there were two writers, and one of them, it was actually based on his life. And for me to see through his eyes, because it was through a child's perspective, and talking about what he was trying to say through the script, it helped me make the choices, because I only focus on the details that he remembered as a child. So, and also, the conversation with the DP is very important, because this is from a child's perspective, and the angle of the shots also. So from an adult to a child, the perspective of the shot is completely different. And also, what do you remember as a child? What is that? Do you remember color? Do you remember certain objects, you know? So intentionally, I focus on those items from a prop master mind, and deciding on certain props. So the set felt almost like a sitcom because it was not it was lived in, but it was just intentionally focused on certain items that were important in his memory.
Very cool. So to kind of maybe take it back a little bit, how did you first get started in all of this? Like, what was it like? Like, explain that to us.
Well, you know, for me to, I got started. I always, like I said, I always loved films, and I always loved storytelling and reading. But my attraction to clothes, as I said, was beyond how it looks. It was what it was saying, and I really wanted to pursue that passion. So I went to NYU Tisch, and that's where I got the training, and I was introduced to directors um, from NYU, including Abby, and 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 then I started with working with those directors, and we learned together. You know, we achieved a lot. We made mistakes together, and then beyond that, because I felt that I needed, because it's still in the world of indies and shorts. It was still possible to maybe do both production design and costume design. So I wanted to have some type of focus on both the production design and costume design. I didn't want to disconnect, which I had experienced before. So I took it upon myself to also do the production design. But I really fell in love with it. So I just, you know, I don't have a preference, but I tend to do a lot of production design more recently, and that's how I started. And then, graduating, I think, my work was started to be recognized, and I was contacted by people outside of NYU, and that's where it is. And I just, that's why I have been able to work on so many different projects. And, um, theater a little bit less because I still like the storytelling of it. It's just the process is completely different, and I think I'm more um, I like to go with my instincts, and the theater process is more of rehearsing, taking the time to really go into the characters and in a different angle. And I like the angle more from a film perspective. And that's how I started.
I mean, that's incredible, especially it must have felt like you've reached a certain stage in your career when you were working outside of your circle, right?
It did. It felt more. That's it. I'm grown up right now. Now you have to deal with budgets, and unfortunately, as designers, we don't want to think about it, but budget is very essential also about how to approach. It's just, I would say it's just as important as like knowing your shot list, um, the angle of the shots, because your producers always try to be as conservative as possible. And usually they go to design to try to to control the budget.
Mm.
So, so you have to have a clear idea of what you will need, and that would start with a conversation early with the DP. If you don't know what is a strategy of the DP, it's as if you arrive on set blind, and then you try to cover as much area as you want, as you feel comfortable with, but most of the time maybe 30% of what you worked on was going to be on the shot. So you have to know exactly, not only because, to save on your time and effort, but also to save on money. Because, and I found in my experience, the reason, most of the time, the reason why um, we could have saved more money, it's because there was no communication, either from the designer or from the DP or from the director. I'm not blaming anyone. It's just like it just happens, because when you on your project, some people are just so much into what they want to accomplish. And if you don't start the conversation early and you don't know, you don't have a close relationship with the DP, then you try to cover yourself by getting as much as possible, covering as much possible, and that's how the money gets wasted. So, for the mailbox, I work with a director of photography.
And you production designed and costume designed that, right?
Yes, I did. And from this, the costume design, I took care of the costume design early because I was there when we sent the locations crew out. I sent a very specific lookbook of what kind of location I was looking for, and in terms of texture, in terms of color, even for the exterior. And that way, they were able to, the more specific you are to your crew scout, the better they'll be able to find what you're looking for. So once they found it, more options, I was there. So I could see exactly what the background will be. And the DP, on the second visit of the location was there and was taking already the pictures of the various angles. And then afterwards, he sent me exactly which one he would do. So I knew exactly what were going to be the angles, and then it was more specific after that when I got the shot list. That way, in terms of costume design, if I know there was a lot of medium shots, I don't have to spend that much money on the shoes, on things like that. And also as a production designer, I don't have to treat the floors as much and things like that. So, and also in terms of what kind of props we needed to focus on to tell what time period we were in.
Absolutely. So, especially in the way that you're describing things, do you feel like the closest relationship that you usually have on set is with the DP?
Yes, it is, because the DP is already in tune with the director, ideally, and the DP, he or she will know what the director wants to achieve with a shot. My job is to make sure that those angles reflects what we're trying to say in terms of design. So I am the DP's shadow. And if I do not have a close communication with the DP, because sometimes, it's every director of photography is different. So if I did not have enough communication and conversations about the shots or a clarity about that, I try to talk to the DP maybe 2 shots ahead, in advance to know what they do so I could shift things quickly, So, I can adapt. Ideally, I want to know exactly because, I save money and time, and also I'm more specific about the design story.
That is so interesting. I want to focus on an aspect of how you define yourself as a production designer. I think in your bio and even in production, you specifically said that you work with low budget, usually projects, right?
Yes, I work with, yeah, indies.
So can you tell us like the strengths and the limitations within that framework? How has been your experience?
So I have, you know, there's a different spectrum. You know, there are, even if there's a low budget, there are crews and directors and DPs who are um, very much into preparation, and the conversation starts very early, and it could start as early as 3 months before the project, and and we check in regularly. And others, because it's low budget, they have to scramble to also get producers, and the producers to raise funds, and so all the focus is then into making sure it happens. And then, unfortunately, that's the only other side of that of the spectrum, is that everything else in terms of designs and costume production design is thought much, much closer to the shooting date. So um, I know how to work in those conditions, but it took me a while to just, jump on that wagon because I prepare. Uh, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you're not going to have a great result, because it's very instinctual at that point, and I just respond to what is needed. And it's more of a raw feeling and excitement about it, and it translates into something that is also just as good as if it was prepared much in much more in advance. So that's been my experience. But I worked also in big machines where we're dealing with millions of dollars, and there's a quick turnaround in television. I would say you have the art department has between 10 to 13 days before the shoot of the episode, but it's a very well-oiled machine, and everybody knows what they do, and it's broken down in different departments, and that's why they can produce that pace. In an indie or a short film, I could be one department. I could be the whole art, production. Uh, from costume to production design to prop master, to set decorator, you name it. Um, but even in shorts, it all depends on the budget. If my budget is maybe $20,000 in a short, you know, we can afford to have also the departments. And I find it um, much more focused that way. And if I had to choose, I would choose. I'm not looking. I enjoy working with independent movies, but having different departments in terms of at least a prop master and a set decorator makes a whole difference.
So would you say that you have like a preference, or do you think it's just kind of like a mode of work?
Uh, my preference is, I mean, it's you. If you talk to any designer, they will always say it's a case by case basis, especially in independent movies. Um, but yes, my preference is to have at least a set decorator and a prop master, and and also the production assistants that can help you with help the set decorator, because then I can focus solely on the design, and making sure that I communicate well with the director and the DP, so uh, all the elements of designs are present and I'm not distracted by the aspects of logistics.
Right, it's all about like wearing almost too many hats, right?
Exactly.
So a question. A lot of students here might have taken production design, might not have taken production design. And so it's not something that maybe immediately comes up when people think, yeah, I'm going to go to film school, I'm going to do production design. How, like, did you feel like, how did you isolate that you felt like you were good at it? Like, what do you think makes uh, an efficient or a good production designer? What do you think?
It's when you don't notice that it has been designed. you know, and on production, when we wrap, let's say the crew showed up after the set deck had done its work, and the crew, when we wrap and we strip everything, a lot of them are very shocked because they say, "Well, I felt like it was a natural, it was already there," and if I get that, then I feel like I did a good job, and making something simple is much more complex, especially, and also if I have, it's much more complex to design a contemporary set than a time period, a period set, because as a contemporary set, we all know that time period, and we all think that we know it, and we all influenced by different things, and we all have an opinion on what it should look like. So the conversation is a little bit more complex with the director when it comes to contemporary set, because we all have our own influences and memory of what it should be. Whereas in the period set, the director tends to trust you with your decision and your choices because you have the training for it. So, but I would say for me, I felt that that I had something, a natural talent for it when the contemporary set, people were not able to tell that it had been designed.
Nice. Yeah. That's an incredible quote. We put it down here: when you don't notice that has been designed. I think that's absolutely right, where it just feels like you're in this world, and it doesn't feel too fabricated, because that can absolutely be a thing. I don't want to take up too much time, but and I want the students to ask some questions. So my last question for now would be, do you have like some dream project that you are hoping to work on, or like how do you like envision the future often as a production designer?
My dream would be, and I will aim towards that, is that I love sci-fis, and
Have you done a sci-fi project?
excuse me.
Have you done one yet?
Well, the mailbox was a sci-fi project, So, it was from a time travel through a mailbox from the 1940s to contemporary. So I want to be able to create a whole different world, uh, through a sci-fi story. But also I like, something, a sci-fi that's mixed with film noir as well. So that's the type of project that I would love to work on someday. Something that is mixed with film noir and sci-fi.
That's so cool. So everyone listening, we have to write this project for Christelle. Okay, actually, I have one more question. Especially for those that may be unfamiliar with what a production designer does, can you briefly tell us, what does pre-production look like? What does principal photography look like for you? What does post look like for you?
Um, for me, for the prep, as a production designer, means it, if I have the support of a prop master and a set deck. For me, the preparation is with the director. And this is number one. So, we talked about the script. We talked about the character, where even if the script doesn't say it, what is their past life, or his or hers, or um, what emotions they deal with. So we really dig in, and I never know how I'm going to start. Sometimes I just pull images from art, paintings, or sculptures, or space, architecture. I never know what um, is going to jumpstart my creative process on a project. Once I pull those images, I share that with the director. that is granted that I have the time, because if it's a project where, you know, I'm brought in maybe a week or two before, you know, we don't have the time to do that, and then the director has to trust me with, and we react on set on what has to be adjusted. But let's say that I have the time, then you know, I share those images with the director, and you know, and then I like to see the reaction, because I know exactly what to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, I'm starting to pull some images of spaces and of props. And then again, you know, I eliminate what does not make sense, or I push more for what I think, or you know, should be kept. And also it makes us realize that there's so many other things that we didn't think about. So the director might say, oh, you know, I didn't think about that, and me as well. And then we're like, okay, let's add that to the pile. And then from there, you know, working with the prop master, we're going to hunt if what of the props. We will work with a um, rental house or prop house, and we'll rent with, you know, all the props that we think we need, and we'll hunt the rest and purchase or find them wherever we can. And um, and then, you know, working with a DP, that's the second aspect of it. I would talk about what will be the shots in the space. And then that's why I see what is necessary to transform the space. And it could be changing the wall colors, or it could be, you know, at that point, I know what the color palette is with the director. So then I talk with the DP about about the light and the shots that that we're gonna do. And then with that, I have a conversation with the the decorator, so we could have a plan. And usually, I will have some drafts that I will send to the DP and director, and then, you know, so they could adjust the different angles of the camera. So that way, we have on paper the space, but also the camera angles. So those are, you know, essential elements of it. There's so many other layers to it, but then, you know, for the day of the shoot, or the day, or a few days prior, I supervise, you know, the moving of furniture, because, you know, a lot of times it's just we have to change it. You know, the thing is that with the locations, a lot of directors and producers, I would say a lot of producers, I get excited, they find a location for within the budget. And, you know, if the conversation, if I was not included in the process, I was, you know, if I was included for a process, I can say, you know, yes, it might be in the budget, but then nothing works inside. And then you're going to have to spend more money in the furniture and the props. It's better to try to really get something that may be in a higher budget, but we have most of what we need, and ultimately you save more money. Um, but you know, let's say that we had that, you know, then the few days before the shoot we start, or maybe one day before, the day of, we move everything in. So that's the and then the director will come, and the DP, and they will see, you know, see if they're okay with it, and if it's what we're trying to, if it confirms everything, and then you're ready to shoot.
That's so fascinating. Thank you for being so detailed. I myself learned something from that. So very cool. I respect production designers so much. I always struggled with the attention to detail. So I just like, I love it. I do want to have the participants ask their own questions. So anyone, you want to either unmute yourselves or type questions in the chat. Have any volunteers? If not, I'll just keep talking. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm working on a short film that I was going to make this semester, but pushed to next semester because of COVID. I'm applying for funding and also creating a budget outline. And one of the areas I'm struggling with budgeting for is production design. I have already found 3 different locations on campus I plan to shoot at, and I've created a Pinterest page of aesthetic inspirations and have a vague idea of how I'd like to production design them, but I'm not sure how extensive slash detailed the set deck and props I plan for should be. And I'm having trouble creating a list in my budget outline of things I should plan for. I don't have a dedicated production designer on my crew yet, so for now I'm planning it out by myself. Do you have any advice for production design, doing pre-production for someone who isn't a production designer?
Um, I would say, um, you have to, I think you have to really stick to the visual that you initially had, and then how it makes you feel. And then once you hold on to that, then you can narrow it down to, because what you want the audience to see is what you want them to feel. So it doesn't have to have so many details and so many props. There are certain things that will draw the audience attention. You know, you can use color, you can use fabric of pattern or something that would uh, give the texture behind, or draw the audience to look somewhere else. Or it all depends of what you're trying to achieve. So I would not worry about all those details. Just the first thing that you have to do on your list is think about your color palette. Think about what you don't want to distract from that color palette, or if you do intentionally want to distract. And if you start with color, then you can move into texture, and then you can move into, if you have the money, uh, objects. A film could be in a jail cell. It looks simple, but it's not that simple. If somebody, you want that person to feel what you intend, the person in the jail has no distraction. And it's human nature to try to entertain your mind. So then that person will focus on certain things on the wall, maybe a drawing, maybe a paint peeling, or rust spot that's already, orange against a gray, or something like that. So you don't need much, So from there you can build on, then, okay, maybe it's, I will give an example of, uh, I was thinking maybe a Handmaid's Meal. I don't know if anybody saw Handmaid's Tale, when she is in prison, but she's in this huge room, and all she has to entertain herself is to count how many flowers on the bedspread. You know, it looks simple, but it's very brilliant to focus the whole, because the bedspread was colorful flowers and the whole space was in a neutral color. So I would say that's the way to start. Start with color, then texture, then maybe see what one or two props you might need.
Yeah, it's basically like basic design principles, right? And it's we tend to overlook it, but it goes back to what you were saying about working with the DP and knowing what your frame is, because if you know
What you want to convey.
exactly. So Taj says, thank you. I have an extensive color palette, and colors an integral part of my film and reflects themes and emotions, so that is very helpful. Good question, Taj. Okay, we have another question here from Chantel. Do you have some nifty ways in which you help to cut cost of production design for a shoot that maybe doesn't have a large budget?
Um, well, the first one will be, if it's not an exterior. I mean, exteriors always will be cheaper. If you could keep it as much as the exterior, that would be great. And then if you have to move it to an interior, maybe a space, a restaurant or something, so it's already, but it's already lived in, it already makes sense. But then if it is not in the storyline, you know, find the right location that has the elements that you need. And what I do, you have to think about if it calls for different other interior scenes, how to transform that scene space into something completely different, you know, and that has to do a lot with the DP as well. So you're gonna have to select your shots accordingly. You know, maybe in the first scene you'll have mostly where you have the windows, and then you're gonna flip it over, and the room is completely different, and it's gonna be something else. It's just like for instance, the mailbox. I had to switch uh, a garage into two spaces and into an apartment. And you know, we couldn't afford alleys. Exterior, one of the exterior that's the most expensive is to rent an alley. It could run really above 15 to and up $1,000 for you know, a day. So you know, we found an alley that was within our budget, but then I had to turn it into the backyard of a nightclub or the back entrance of a nightclub, or then we have to pretend a chase, you know, and then I blocked it to make it look like a dead end as well. That was scenic painting, you know. So try to use the same space and transform it into the different scenes.
That's actually like really great advice, especially when you go outside of the realm like of using more props and using more design. So great question, great answer.
Yeah, and the lights and your DP can make the whole space feel completely different, you know. So find
You
a good location.
You actually mentioned something that I want to follow up on. How, in your experience, how in communication are you with the location manager, if there is one?
It starts with me. So I will get as much of a great location as much as I was specific into what I was looking for. And so I start with images of spaces and textures that I'm looking for. And so I start with the type of space that I'm looking for. Then I include images of the wall texture that I'm looking for, and also the type of windows. I get as specific as possible. And then if I get at least half on the checklist, that's good for me. You know, the type of carpeting, because having carpet is expensive. So if I can find, and it's very hard right now because everybody into wood floor. So when I need a carpet, so, but you know, that could work also with the DP. In my last project, I had to, I worked on a crack house, and I wanted a brown, high fiber, mustard carpeting, and I just rented a piece of it, and then we were able to move it, just work with the DP, so it looked like the whole room was carpeted. So that's how I work. If I have, I give a lookbook with a checklist of what I need, and it's very important to include all the images, and be very organized. You know, organize the space, the textures, and the colors. So I don't have to change that. That's great for your budget.
That's amazing. Wow, that I just like that's so creative. I don't even think I would ever think of that, but that's why you're amazing, right? Okay, we got a new question. Michael. Hey Michael. What are the toughest challenges you face as a production designer? Is it budget constraints, problem solving, communication? What do you think?
Communication. If you don't communicate with me, or if I don't communicate with you, but I learned quickly. I made the mistakes enough where at the beginning, when I know I made a mistake of not communicating, because I had this great design in my head, and and then as we come closer, I realize I don't have the budget, and or maybe the shot list shows that it's completely different, the angles. And even if I had the contact with the director, if the shots are not what I thought, and I didn't, I can't wait for the DP to expect the DP to communicate it to me. I have to, pursue it. So for me, it's communication. Number one, if that has caused quite some drama at times, the lack of communication. Um, but so from the get-go, I don't make that mistake anymore, and it's not. And we have different personalities, and we all come together on a set. And some people are outspoken, some people are more shy, or some people are more introverted, and so I just come very openly and just say, can we talk about this? Can we set time to talk about that? And I don't take it personally if the DP doesn't speak to me about shots. Maybe he was not trained that way, or maybe he's really much into his head, or her. I work a lot with a lot of female DP as well, but it's communication. And then the second one, I don't think it's a budget, because the number one question I will ask when I'm approached for a project is like, what is your budget? If you don't tell me the budget, I'm going to run. If you don't tell me what it is, I'm going to run the other way. Because if you don't know what you can afford, then I cannot tell you if I can do it, because I cannot be in the unknown. You have to have a number in mind, and even if it's a wrong number, because then we could adjust, you are not a production designer, so you might not think, oh, our costume designer is like, oh, what should I allocate for art? Because I have all the equipment that I have to use, and and the location money, and I have to make sure I do right by my crew, and so you have to put a number, and then once you have the number, even if I think it's wrong, or it's not, it's not there yet, then I would say, okay, let's talk about it and let's see what we can do. And then, so what I would say is like, okay, if this is your number, and I don't tell you what you will get, but I will tell you what you will not get. Because I think if I'm not straightforward with what you will not get, then that creates a little bit of tension. I'll be straightforward from the beginning. I was like, okay, this is the budget. I'm still willing to work with you, but you will not get this and this and this and that. And that way we could make it happen anyway, make the magic happen in some creative way.
That's such an interesting answer, though not surprising, right? Communication tends to be it. Great question, Michael. Okay, we have another question from Taj. He asks, what are some places you recommend shopping for production design, and what percentage of your budget generally should you set aside for production design?
All of it, no kidding. um, well, it's very difficult to answer where, because the story would determine where. Um, for instance, when I was doing the crack house, I rented a lot of things. Sometimes it's much cheaper to rent props and used props.
Can you give an example of something you would have rented?
A couch, 1980s worn couch. I'm going to rent it, for $40, 46 to between $40 to $60 for the whole, period. So that is
Ignorant.
cheaper than that.
How would that work? Like, how do you like put that out there? Like, I need a 1980s couch for the day.
Oh no, the rental house, the prop houses, they deal with films all the time. So
Okay.
they have catalogs online, and I choose what I need. And it could be, let's say it was I worked on two 1980s movies by now, and you know, and I had to do kitchens, bedrooms, living rooms, you know, so anything even from a jug, water jug, or plates or things like that, all of that you could find in one location, you know. So when you look at the rental price, it will be a lot of times cheaper than if you were to buy it. And the good thing is that you could just send it back. The only cost that you incur doing that is that you have to include in your budget a truck. The one thing that for me is that I moving forward is essential to me, is to have a production design truck. Because if you separate all your production design items and props, or even your costumes, to this car and that car and this is just a recipe for disaster in terms of getting things ready on time for you to shoot and not lose that light, you know? So um, one truck, even if it's just, you know, a moving van, or but something. So usually rental places is a cheaper option. However, if you just need a few things, maybe, you know, that are used, I will hunt the Goodwills and Salvation Army and things like that. My prop master is pretty good at that as well. So, but then, you know, if you have a budget, I will get it, you know, exactly what I need, and then I would age it, but you can return it. um, then, you know, if it's something that is not you, you don't need to have aged. I would look at places, if you, especially if you're on a budget, I would look at places where you could return most of the items without any question asked. Uh, so, you know, any stores that have interior design items is an option. But I like to work with rental places, and also most professional designers do. And because you can specifically choose what you want, and it's not excessively expensive.
I love this answer because when I did production design for my feature, I did the production design and it was a surreal experimental film. So design was really important because I was building these spaces from scratch, and it was just like every other day going to a different Goodwill, you know, looking at interior design places and you know making sure that we return things on time. So it's amazing advice. All right, another question. Thank you, Taj. From Ala. When collaborating with a director, how would you want the director to convey their vision, especially if you ever worked in a film that comes from a different culture and background? What a great question.
Um, so I worked on a movie that was about a wedding uh, from a foreign country, and it's about seeing family pictures, um, and also pictures of events. You know, it was for this. It was a wedding, and I was doing the costume design, and I knew nothing about the culture. And the one thing that I'm terrified of doing is doing costume from a different culture, and I don't do it right. So for me, I contacted people from that country, or if the actors also are from that country, I will ask them questions. You have to be vulnerable and acknowledge that you are learning, but you still a professional designer in terms of what works in terms of the color and the whole um, the whole aspect with the director and the DP. But for me, it's really making sure it's looking at family pictures, and also looking at videos or documentaries from that country, and try to replicate it in a way that feels natural. And when I did that wedding, a lot of the actors and especially a lot of the extras were from that country, and they felt that they were at the real wedding. And, you know,
You.
and that for me is it was not just my work. It's just because I kept asking, is there anything that feels off? You know, the way you put the veil, or what colors, what this color means, and uh, so for me, that's what is it that I have to avoid. Um, and so if I have that conversation with people who are from that culture, and I succeeded, I think if I ever in a situation again, that's what I would do, is to talk to people who are actually from there.
That's so enlightening and just very smart, you know. It's not just relying on like Google, because I'm sure that maybe people might be like, okay, yeah, I'll Google it. It's more like building anecdotes and building personal connections with people. And I think that that's amazing. We have more questions from people, and Alice,
Yes,
thank
it is. It is flashes of dye.
Oh, nice. Okay. I want to kind of follow up on this question though, because you keep talking about your process and it's fascinating. Do you have like a favorite part of your process where you just like love diving into this certain part?
My favorite part is when I work with set deck and we make it happen.
So bringing it to life.
We bring it to life, uh, and when the actors come on set and you know get excited about it. You see their body language is different. They move differently, and they are connecting with the set. They're not reacting to it. They're connecting with it. So, so for me, it's that's my favorite part. That's my favorite part.
Amazing. I can imagine. It's just like, for me, it's kind of the opposite. I love all the research. And then when it comes to doing it, I'm like, no. But you're
But
great.
the research aspect is very soothing to me. I really love research. Um, so I would say that's the number two thing. It would be like doing the research. But my favorite part is when we bring everything together, because it takes a lot of teamwork and effort to make it happen. So when we bring it to life, it's it's very satisfactory.
So we actually have a related question to that. This is from Joshua. He asks, what are some good interpersonal skills to practice when you're working for someone who wants to wear too many hats on a production to the point where it is difficult for you to do your own job?
Um, Try to direct the conversation to one subject at a time. And and when they dwell on something that is more of a passive aggressive approach, be straightforward in saying this is not helping the work. Don't make it a personal, because then you're just putting oil on fire. Just always bring back the fact that we all want to make this a success. So set the boundaries when the comments or or the action of that person is too diversified that they lose focus. And so because they're doing so many things, you have to have your list, so you bring them back to what matters, and do a checklist like that, and but not in terms of you need to do this or you need to do that, or it's just about production. Let's say camera, the camera department needs uh, will be in a good position if they have such and things. What is it that we can do to help the department? keep it into department language in terms of this person or that person. The more you remove the person and you make it like it's about the film
Yeah.
and the success of the film, the easier the conversation becomes, and less tense, because we all here for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly. Similarly, on that note, we have another question that relates to that. Did you ever have trouble getting along with a director or other member of crew, and how did you overcome this?
By setting boundaries, but in a nice way. Um,
Do you think, is that like when does that conversation happen for you, usually? Or,
there's usually some type of red flag, and I have, like many people, ignored it and moved forward. Um, it's about like I said, it's going back to that. It's just not making it about me.
Mhm.
Not about, if the person is not respectful, um, I would just, set the boundaries and say, your behavior is not helping right now, or how is this going to resolve? How is your screaming or your frustration is helping this right now? This is not helping. Let's find a way to make it work. And that's always about making it about the film. And I quickly learned not to make it personal, because making a film is very, very stressful.
Yeah.
You know, we will do it because we love it, right? But it can be stressful if the tone from the producer is stressful. I've worked on very limited budgets, and we all concerned about each other's department, how we can make it happen. But the producers and the directors, very calm, and it sets the tone. So if you don't allow for your AD or your producer to bring the stress, I think it would help anyway. So I think the AD sets the tone as well, and it's very important that to just keep calm. But
Yeah, no,
it's
you're
not, it's not always, I must say that I never lost my temper. I just made it about being respectful. If you're not, I will let you know that this is not okay, and just move to what we can do for the film.
It's also kind of a stigma, honestly, especially when it comes to us as women. If we're the ones that lose our minds, it's like I've seen it happen before, So I think that's such great advice, and especially with you all when you're making your films, I know that it's hard to kind of you know have that conversation. But I think Christelle's advice of keeping it departmental and not being like you're the problem, I think that that's actually really brilliant. Abby has a follow-up question, a really good one. She says that when it comes to designing when it's not your own culture, where does your creativity as the designer come in when there's a certain way that a costume or attire is supposed to be? In other words, how do you add in your creativity to design when the parameters are strict? For example, if the wedding dress is red in the culture, it cannot be any other color. How does a designer amplify this so that it makes sense within the culture it is also designed?
Well, for the if you're referring to splashes of dye, yes, the dress was red, and as a result, for me to really emphasize it as a design, you have to be just as diligent with the extras. So we had a bunch of extras, and my assistant and I emailed every extras and said, you cannot wear those colors. And of course, some of them came with the car, but we always have like a plan B and have an extra set of clothes. And and also working with production design, because we really wanted to have the focus on the red, but also the focus on the fiance who was wearing. We decided that he he was he was not happy about this marriage, so I dressed him as if he was going to a funeral almost, and so nobody else could wear black. So that is an design uh, intent. And from that point of view, then the DP could focus on the two of them, him wearing black and her wearing the red. And that's how we were able to emphasize that. And I work with a production designer as well, with the background also avoiding any colors that would distract from that. But it still had to be a the director still wanted um, a lot of colors in the extras, so we cannot make it like a whole all the extras wearing neutral colors, but at least to avoid the colors I wanted to focus on.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, it goes down back to what you were saying, color palette, right?
I mean, when I do, when I get to do my, when I get to have the time and do a proper pitch to the director, I usually will have different color palettes for each scene, how it moves from one color or how it stays into that color.
Very, very cool. I have a question. So you talked about possibly like what is a project that you would love to work on, but what are some things that you've watched that has been either influential or you watch it and you're like, wow, this is like one of the best designed things I've ever seen. Like, where does some of your inspirations come from?
Well, more recently, uh, I've was blown away by the production design and cost design of Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Um, I found, the cinematography, of course, was brilliant, but uh, I would say the production design was so clever to reflect the different social classes of the blues, of the grays, and the red, and the teal, and it was just a delight. I was blown, completely. It blew my mind. So that's more recently, but I would say any other film. I don't know. There's so many. There's so many different things, but I would say mm, my I have great admiration for Blade Runner. For me,
Mhm.
it's as a sci-fi, it's just brilliant.
Did you like the new one?
Uh, I felt that they were respectful of the spirit of the first one, but
Yeah.
it was it felt different.
It did, yeah.
I like the first one. Like I said, I like film noir, and so
And German expressionism, it's just that's just like
exactly. So for
yeah.
me, the first one I prefer the first one to the more recent one, the second one.
Cynthia says Rachel in that light when she first walks in the Ridley Scott. And I remember that shot too. You remember it?
Yes, yes. So, and as a matter of fact, I love this genre so much that my was Dark City, and I've never seen the film. Up to today, I haven't seen it. But I read the script, and because I don't want to be influenced by the previous design, but I love the script, and not the final script. It was the draft before the final one.
The shooting script?
Yes, not the I didn't use the shooting script. I used the final draft, the draft before that.
Okay.
He changed the ending for the shoot, the shooting script, and I have a glimpse of it on my website. In the design concept, we have it's Dark City, and for me, so I designed both the aliens and the clothes, um, and also production designed it, and you can see what I'm attracted to and what I would love to do someday. You know, to have that kind of sci-fi uh, under my belt would be great.
So that's really cool. For your thesis project, you got to choose the script and then you built just entire design concepts around that script.
Yes, well, it had to be a film that was, that it cannot, it had not, it could not be just a conceptual script, so it had to be already filmed, produced. And so when I did the research on the subject, I purposely did not go into any images because even just one image could influence your design. So I did a search of scripts, and I read a few scripts, and that one just not the shooting script, but the draft was fantastic. I mean, it was much longer, but it was really a great process for me. So and I could already see it, and I can't wait someday to be able to do something like that.
That's amazing. Cynthia says that's a great assignment, and I'm impressed you still haven't seen the original. Maybe now in quarantine, right?
Yeah, I
um,
don't know. I don't know why I'm a little
I feel almost
nervous about seeing it, but I've got from some established production designers say you should watch it. You see, it's not the same thing what you did, and you should appreciate the angle that you chose to have for the design.
that's so cool. Have you been working on stuff when in quarantine? Like, have you been kind of like keeping busy, or is it kind of like a downtime for you?
Well, unfortunately, like most of my peers, all productions are shut down. And the only thing that some of us we could find is for projects that are still in the works for possibly the end of the year. So for designers just started, we assist the designers with sketching and drafts or anything that we can do online. Um, and I must say that we support each other very well that way, because even the very established designers reach out to us and uh, say, do you want to help me render or color edit or anything that's graphic work, anything that we can do. But it's more, but so it's not highest creativity, but it gets us engaged. I was working up to March 12th, so it hasn't been too long
Yeah.
on, not working. So I don't know. I don't know for the how it's gonna do to my creativity afterwards. I think, there's always something that we can do. Um,
Have
if we
you been
choose to.
like watching stuff, or is it just kind of like a time where you're like, I just need to disconnect a little bit?
I find I'm very surprised that I don't turn on the television or my computer to watch anything until in the evening. Um, I don't want to be numb to watching so much of it, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I make a conscious choice of what I want to watch. And I'm making very conscious choices to the point where I will Google first what is the best thing to watch instead of just browsing and just watch whatever. And that has worked for me. And the last film that I watched and I was amazing was the series. It was Unorthodox on Netflix.
Oh, I keep hearing about that. So you
It
suggest.
was it was a good pick. Production design and costume design was very clever and very authentic. And especially if you watch the making of, it's a treat.
All right, that's going up on my list because someone told me to watch it yesterday, so it's a sign. Um, Everyone, please send in your final questions. I wrote so much that you said, so I still have a few more that I want to ask you. Oh man, I just lost it. You were talking about the being creative. Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, does anyone have a question right now? Um, yeah, what was my question? It had to do with.
Can I ask a question? Hi, can I just ask a question? When you were talking about community, Christelle, it made me think of sort of how that community sort of understands itself. And it seems like there are very few sort of roles or positions or jobs in any industry, but in filmmaking, that have a history of women sort of serving in those roles. Casting directors, I understand, is one of the few that has mostly women. But so I'm wondering sort of what that kind of history feels like and how people in the community of being designers sort of understand that history or think about that history.
That's a great question because as it's also a conscious choice that I make is that I'm very supportive of women designers and directors and DPs. I mean, anyone who is a woman working in this industry know it's not easy. So I give my all when it comes to supporting a woman in film, and I will make I will try to work as much as I can. Um, if I had to choose, I just want to work with more women who are director of photography and directors. And for an example of um, um, exciting project, and it only happened once, where it was an all-female cast, and I mean all-female crew, and all-female cast as well. And so it was in the music video, Black Girl Magic, and the only uh, person that was a man was the AD, which he didn't feel too comfortable screaming at anyone. um, but that's the feeling of that. And also, I don't do a lot of theater, but when I do, it has to be something meaningful. And the last theater production that I worked on was also an all-female crew and all-female cast. And the energy is completely different. We are supporting of each other, and we remind ourselves about how lucky we are to work together and how talented we are. And the collaborative process is much more organic that way. Um, so whenever I can, I would always choose first a woman director.
Very cool. I completely agree. They're amazing. Okay, a few more questions here from students. Taj asks, what fabrics/props do you think convey a theme of danger?
Hmm. It's hard to answer the question without knowing what the background is.
For sure,
Because,
yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was working on this film, and a director wanted the main character to wear red to convey danger. And I said that she was in danger, or getting the focus. And I said, um, why do you want the red? And and in contrast to what kind of background? What is the emotion you're trying to convey? And usually people naturally go to red, but it's not necessarily that. The danger will be, for that particular story, was the fact that she will be killed. What is more uh, frightening is that to see the danger or to already project your death. And for me, I thought, and it was in that short film Kashmir. And for me, I wanted her to feel frail and vulnerable, and I chose to show a lot of skin and a very neutral, thin fabric dress. And once the director saw her in that dress, I was like, oh, yes, then you put your gun in front of her face like that, and she's so vulnerable. You don't see the gun right away, but you see how something terrible is about to happen. So it's hard to just say, oh, these are the typical colors for danger. It's always, what is the emotion you're trying to convey, and what is the background color palette?
I love that because I always think some of the most this is just an example off of the top of my mind, but Midsummer, the film that came out last year. Yeah, that one was washed with so many pastels and whites, but people felt really, scared and afraid of what was going on in it. And I think that that's probably one of the most important questions or ways to approach design. Especially, it's not defaulting to blue is calm, red is danger. It's thinking, well, how can we build the context through other choices? So I like that. Okay, a few more questions. Michael asks, for aspiring production designers, what are some mistakes to avoid?
Um, you have to show restraint at some point. It's good to be excited, but in the real world, when you have to deal with the budget, um, you know, communication, we talked about it already, Um, and so the number one mistake would be not having that established. And from a more specific production design aspect, is be intentional on what you're trying to achieve. If you want it to look um, natural, organic, lived in, make sure that it feels this way and not designed.
Yeah.
But then sometimes having it designed can be a great intent. I'm going back again on Handmaid's Tale. When they go to the supermarket, you see it's well organized, and then you see the canned food or cans of food. All of that is that was done, the labels and everything, and it's organized in colors, and when you have that intent, that it looks fake, it still can be a great effect, for if it serves the story. And so you have to really make sure that if you don't have a specific intent for either for it to be organic or for it to be design, um, you cannot just wing it. if you try to wing it, even if it's something that has to do with chaotic has to be organic as well. So um, if you choose to keep yourself into reality, just rely and trust maybe pictures that you took of outside. I mean, if you go to um, you take pictures of a mattress or garbage on the side, you know, trust those kind of pictures and reality, and that way when you replicate it, it feels organic. And and when you do, you intend to have it designed, be very organized in terms of the color palette. Um, so for me to create, for example, for a crack house, I've never been in a crack house. I'm not adventurous enough to go in a one, but I talk to people who've been in crack houses, or I, I watched documentaries, and, from how the doses of cracks look, how to, what color they should be, what size they should be, what kind of valve they should be, and all of that has to feel legit. So um, really lean into your research. And also you have to be and have an investigative, creative mind, and don't be afraid to ask. Always go with the fact that you do not know.
Very good.
And,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Okay, two more questions, one for me, and we'll end with Ala. But similarly to that, maybe for my own sanity, can you give some tips on how to dress up a college dorm room? Because I see so many short films in college dorm rooms, and I can just tell that they don't think about designing the space. And it can be a hard thing to do. They're, usually just like boxes. But I'm sure you've had some experience, especially from school. What do you have any tips on that?
Um, for that, pictures, I just use a lot of pictures of actual dorm rooms, and I don't try to I don't try to make it up. Like, I really have to rely on the research, and then it all depends on the character.
Right.
If it's a woman, if it's two people, or just one person, how you divide the space. Um, it really goes back to the research and the pictures. And yes, a lot of I've been in a situation where, you know, I will be told, just put some boxes there, it's fine. It's just like, no, you have to think about what is the most occupied space, used space in that room, right? And what makes sense in terms of movement as well. And in the mind of a college student, some are organized, some want to have a very practical ergonomic space. It all depends on the person, but really it's about uh, making it feel lived in. And one thing, I think one of the mistakes a production designer makes is thinking that it's just a set, and not including other people that might be in their lives. So signs of that, in that room. And it does not necessarily have to be to the typical go-to picture of mom and dad, or, it could be something that was given to that person. Those little details of it being lived in, but also them be connected to the outside world, you know, and it could be a poster of a country they always wanted to go to, or, something. You have to connect it to the outside as well. Otherwise, you'll feel like a sitcom college dorm.
Yes, pay attention to the advice, students. Okay, and our final question from Ella. Story-wise, how would you process your designing?
Story-wise, how I would process the design. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Is that in terms of the story of the script?
Maybe, do you mean like how does she begin her design concepts after she reads a script?
Well, when I read the script, I take notes right away in terms of what visual comes to my mind. I will write on the side, sometimes just a color that pops. Sometimes it's just what the person wears, because some scripts are very specific, especially when the clothing is very essential, especially if it's from a different culture. The director will make a point, of the writer, a point of describing what the person is wearing. And so if I don't know about the culture, I'll write or go look into that. But what I do is I visually just make a note of what visual comes to my mind in the first read. And, you know, then I openly share it with the director, and I stay open to the possibility that that's totally not what she or she had in mind, and then adjust accordingly.
Very cool. Well, Christelle, it was so nice meeting you. It was
Thank
so
you so much. It was very, very nice to talk
and
about design.
thank you to everyone for joining us. I see a lot of familiar names, and the names that are familiar, I wrote them down because I know I'm going to get emails later. And yeah, Cynthia, do you have final notes? Do I say something?
No. I just want to say thank you again. It was so fascinating, and I have now 16 more questions that we'll need to have you back.
Thank
It
you.
was really great. I just can't tell you how helpful. Thank you.
All the questions were very, very on point, and I was very glad to answer them.
And a lot of students saying thank you. So I know this was helpful, and it was honestly so much fun. So
Thank you. That was fun for me too.
time we talk, you are.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.